Hello, everybody. This is my journey from being very naive to being not so naive any longer. So how did the journey happen? So I was born and raised in Switzerland. Those are the pictures I took in my last trip, 2023, in February and March. Nature is still absolutely gorgeous in Switzerland. When I grew up with a happy family, and my heroes were Heidi and Pollyanna. So that kind of gave me the idea that the world was to be seen through rose-colored glasses. But I was a happy child, and I had a boyfriend. I toured Italy with him on a Suzuki 250, then France on a Suzuki 550, which is a picture of it right there. Had a great time. Then I learned to sail in the Netherlands. Another great time. I took a trip from London to Kathmandu in a converted Bedford truck, and it was an amazing journey. You can learn more about it on my website, daniellejcoaching.com/about. And I talk about my journey, meeting Indira Gandhi, being in different ashrams. During that trip, somebody gave me a book called Chariots of the Gods, and it was my first big English book, so it took me quite a while to read it, and it started to plant a seed in my mind that things may not be as they appear. It talks about the events that have happened throughout the world, throughout history. Quite interesting. Then I got the opportunity to come to this country in April 79. I worked as a chocolate rep at the Watergate and didn't really work out. So I went to visit a distant relative of mine, a great grand uncle who had done some genealogy study, had found my family in Switzerland. And I was learning to fly when I was in Washington, D.C., continue my flying lessons, got my VFR pilot's license, and that's where I met the guy who became my husband. Then we got inducted into a cult. I didn't realize it at the time. I kind of spoke English, but not that well. And I had been in church when I was in Switzerland. I didn't realize it was cults. And basically, it was telling women to obey, submit to the pastor first, then submit to their husband, or else the wrath of God was going to come upon us. And I was terrified. It was not until I had my first daughter that I started to question things. I was nursing her and she was kind of noisy, so I was asked to go to another room where I didn't hear the pastor's sermon. So I was starting to do research on my own and realize what they were teaching was not what other churches were teaching, but I was still living in fear, the fear of God that, if I didn't follow exactly what they said and they could quote scripture, then the wrath of God was going to be upon me. After over a decade of marriage, I became very sick. I was bedridden for weeks or even months, but I felt trapped. There was not much I could do. I was in a lot of pain. I had had my fifth child, and I had my sixth one and my seventh one. I felt trapped in a situation in isolation. I didn't know anybody, and I didn't even realize that it was an abusive situation because I lived with those rose-colored glasses. And the problem seemed to be that I was European and I could not understand American. That was a big problem, although it was not. It was more manipulation. Anyway, after being so sick, all kind of circumstances, and I talk about it in another video, I got all kind of diploma. I got my ND in naturopathic doctors that helped me to get out of bed and start feeling better. And I did self-development. I got a PhD in the power of the mind in healing. And then I accumulated credentials after credentials to help me find myself again. Because as I mentioned, I traveled the world. I was happy. I was an empowered young woman. And at the time there, I was not even able to say what color I liked because I knew I was going to be rebuked because it was not the proper color. Whatever I said was wrong. I did not even talk very much because I had an accent and I was told that people could not understand me and just to shut up. Basically, shut up, follow, obey, submit. That was all that I learned in that cult. Well, eventually I got empowered again and it was time to divorce. 20 years of isolation, abuse, and 16 years of legal abuse. Eventually, I got to remove those rose-colored glasses and look at the world the way it was. And it was a bit terrifying. When you go to court, you expect justice because you have been trained that justice is blind. It's going to deal with both parties in a just way. And what I realized going to court is justice is not blind, and it's more looking at who has the money, who can we manipulate to get more money. I ended up meeting Karen Huffer, who had written a book, Legal Abuse Syndrome. She had studied people going through court for over 20 years and realized they were developing symptoms akin to PTSD or complex PTSD. She also wrote the book, Unlocking Justice. We started a support group, not only for women going through divorce, although it was pretty horrible. It is believed that 58,000 children are put with the abuser, the pedophile, who sells them, beats them up, etc., every year by court order. And one of these children is being murdered, commits suicide every 10 days in this country because of court orders. So no, justice is not blind. Justice is a business. I believe family court is a $30 billion business. They are not protecting the children. They're not protecting the abused parents. They just make money. And the support group we had was for all kinds of people, because in court there was also the problem with probate court had problem. People had lost their jobs illegally. People had problems with HOA. All these people were going against injustice, which was causing that legal abuse syndrome. So I worked for many years with people having problems with the legal system. And then 9/11 hit, and my daughter, one of my daughters called me and said, Mom, you need to get to a TV. We didn't have one at the time because I think World War III has started. So I went to my neighbor and I saw the planes in the tower and then the tower crumblings. And intuitively, I said, this is not possible. You cannot have airplanes way up that crumbles towers. So I did a lot of research for several months. Then I came across, I don't remember if it's an Italian or Spanish engineer who said the laws of physics did not stop for America on that day. Later on, I met with different groups and I became part of the group. I was part of the DVD series, 9/11 Explosive Evidence, Experts Speak the Truth. Later on, working with the demolition of truth with psychologists, explaining why people tend to believe the narrative, even if it doesn't make sense, but it's safer to believe the government's narrative than starting to question it. And I kept looking at what was going on, studying deeper and deeper, and seeing that we were manipulated in so many ways. We are being taught history that is not really history. We are kind of funneled into different kind of beliefs. So I wanted to know how we got manipulated. One of the first movie I watched was Wag the Dog. If you haven't seen that movie, it is enlightening what they can do. And now, I think the movie was made in 68. And now with the technology we have, you don't know what picture is actually true, what actor is saying the truth, what president is really talking, or is it all manipulated with technology? So that was a great, great movie. That started me thinking, well, things may not be as we are being shown. Then I read the book Propaganda that was from Edward Bernays, who's a nephew of Freud, and he studied what Freud had learned about how to manipulate the psyche, the subconscious mind. One of the things he said in almost every act of our daily lives, whether in the sphere of politics or business, he's a father of public relation, of marketing. In our social conducts or ethical thinking, we are dominated by the relatively small number of persons. It is they who pull the wires, which control the public mind. So we have been manipulated since we were born, cradle to grave, going through the education system. A lot of it is just manipulation. He also said Goebbels was using my book, Crystallizing Public Opinion, as a basis for his destructive campaign against the Jews of Germany. This shocked me. But Bernays did a lot of things. If you read his book on propaganda, it is thanks to Bernays that women started to smoke because it was a sign of liberation. It's because of Bernays that Americans eat bacon and eggs in the morning. He knows how to manipulate public opinion to get people to go onto a one-mind track. He also said we are governed, our minds are molded, our tastes formed, our ideas suggested. Especially nowadays, we have so much with our cell phone, we constantly get news, we have social media that keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, and people get terrorized. So we are manipulated, a lot of time manipulated because of repetition, 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 and we get it from every side, from news, from social media. It's always the same song. It takes some effort to dig under and figure out where that thought is coming from. What are they trying to do? Then we had the COVID situation. There is so much written about masks and what that COVID is, but you need to dig a little bit further than the social media or the news give you. Again, we are being manipulated. Somebody wants to shape our belief to suit them, not to suit us, but to suit them. One of the great books I read a few months ago was The Psychology of Totalitarianism by Matthias Desmet. He's done a lot of different podcasts and interviews. It's very interesting how we started that manipulation, that all of a sudden everybody got frightened by that virus that ended up being kind of a cold, really. So dig deeper than what the news tell you, dig deeper than your fear. And then we had the war in Ukraine. And again, what's behind it? What is the manipulation behind it? Watch that movie, Wag the Dog. You may understand what's going on. Oh, and now we have the situation between Palestine and Israel. Again, it's mass manipulation. I remember there was a war in Libya, and somebody said, look at these images. This is not from Libya. This is from a scenario that happened in Greece, but they were taking the same images to frighten us. A few weeks ago, I spoke with somebody who lives in Paris and asked him how bad the situation was in Paris. And he said, no, there's just some skirmishes in some areas, but there, where they were living, there was no problem. I met somebody who lived in San Francisco, same thing, say, yeah, there are places that is really bad, and that's what the news will focus on. And sometimes also the news take pictures out of movies and show you that it's what is happening nowadays. It's horrible, so many people are dying, but it was from a movie. It's not what it's actually happening, so beware, don't be manipulated. It engenders fear. When you manipulate it, there is a virus, it's going to kill everybody, and then another virus coming, and then there is a war and the threat of nuclear war, and then people are going to come after you. You live in constant fear, and the powers that be, the manipulator, can divide us, black against white, male against female, and pro this, anti that. It's all being a manipulation so that we are divided and they can conquer us. That means they can manipulate our thinking to their liking. So what's the antidote? I tell my clients, go into nature. When you go look at nature, you look at animals. I just went for a walk this morning and there were some deer and a lot of songbirds and a lot of black-winged blackbirds, because there was a whole alley full of little sunflowers. Sunflowers are dead, but there is a bunch of seeds. So there was hundreds of these birds that were just pecking on the seeds. Or have an animal, go by a lake, go to a park, be in nature, observe nature. And when you look at breathtaking view, it also helps you to stay young. When you look at nature, it's refreshing, it's rejuvenating. And as you observe animals, insects, butterflies, whatever, you don't think about the news, you don't think about the manipulation. You're actually doing something good for you, for your health. And then balance the bad news with good news. Yesterday, I was in a meeting and I met a lady whose whole endeavor is to put flower pots everywhere on balconies. She said there was 100 communities of apartments that had over 100 apartments, and she wanted to put flowers or plants on all the balconies. The idea came to her when she was in France, and I told her in Switzerland, our balconies are full of flowers everywhere. And she wants to see that too. So even if you can't go into nature, why not get a few pots and put some plants and flowers you can look at? It might attract birds, it might attract bees. It is nature, it's rejuvenating. Then another lady in the group made a card game for teenage girls to help them find out who they truly are, what their authentic self is, and what they enjoy. Great game. She wants to put it in the hands of 1 million girls by 2029. It's a great idea. And then my daughter this year is going to take people out to take pictures of the Milky Way, of flowers, doing moonlight photography, even wildlife. I went out with her way up on the Rockies to see the Milky Way. And let me tell you, it is fantastic to be out there just watching the star. I was in awe. I wasn't thinking about the news, the wars, the disease that I could potentially have. I was in awe of nature. And during that time, your body restructure, rejuvenates itself. It's important to be in nature. I just finished a course if you're interested to see how, one of the things I used extensively to help myself going through the whole legal problem. And then during the support group, that's also what I was teaching to all the students, all my clients. So if you're interested, go on my website, daniellejcoaching.com/freedom-course, and look at it. Right now, it's at 60% off sale as I'm doing a pre-launch. And then if you want to speak with me, if you need a breakthrough, I like to work very fast to get rid of all the past baggage we have, all the trauma. There's all kind of new techniques now, not manipulative techniques, but kind of derived from the same thing, what can change the brain for the better. You can get rid of your problems, of your challenge, of things you have been carrying for so many years very quickly. And then I'll give you the tools to help you not live in fear, not in anxiety, because it's not the fear, the anxiety that is so bad. It's when we accumulate and we don't get rid of it. Think about brushing your teeth. If you don't brush your teeth for a few days, you're going to accumulate all kind of junk in it. It's the same thing with the mind. If we're not careful, we're being manipulated, we're getting fearful and have anxious. There are tools that you can use. It only takes a few minutes a day to get rid of that toxic trash. And then hopefully we'll have a happier, healthier, and more peaceful future. So don't hesitate to call me, daniellejcoaching.com/discover. It's a free call. It is confidential, complimentary, about 20 minutes. We're going to talk about what we can do to help you get out of the manipulation, clear the toxic mindset, and move forward empowered. And I'll talk to you soon.